Emeka, I know you've given so much of your life to football, but I'm curious, what do you feel the game of football has given you back in return?
I mean, it's a really good question. I think that, the unfortunate thing about sports is that they don't always love you back.
Welcome to the Schultz Report, presented by Fanatics Sportsbook. I'm your host, NFL insider Jordan Schultz, and on today's show, I'll be breaking down a turbulent Week 2 that featured season-altering injuries, early season-defining wins, very bad officiating, and much more. And with everything that's going on, I'm going to rate just how optimistic or pessimistic we should be at this point in the young season. Of course, Keyshawn Johnson will be checking in to give his thoughts on Week 2 and on some terrific young wide receivers. And speaking of that, Tampa Bay's standout wideout and national champ Emeka Egbuka is joining the show to talk about the Ohio State University and his first taste of the NFL. He does lead the league in touchdowns. Lock in and let's go. Football's unpredictable, but there's always a few guarantees. Some team will punt on 4th and inches to everyone's disappointment. Guaranteed. A ref will blow a pass interference call. Guaranteed. Here's another guarantee. Fanatics Sportsbook has the best football offer this season. Every single football game day until October with Fanatics Sportsbook. If your football bet loses, new customers get up to $100 back in fan cash and can also bet $10 to get $100 in fan cash. No one likes losing, but with Fanatics, you're still winning fan cash. Make the switch and download Fanatics Sportsbook, where every game day comes with a guarantee. Fanatics Sportsbook. Winning hits different here. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Connecticut, call 888-789-7777. Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY. Maryland, visit mdgamblinghelp.org. Offer not available in all states. Terms apply. See Fanatics Sportsbook app. Let's jump right into it with the absolute biggest piece of news to hit this season, and that is the turf toe injury to Bengals superstar quarterback Joe Burrow. This is a catastrophe. I will not sugarcoat it. On a 1 to 5, I'm going to go 4.5. That's my level of concern, but it's not a death sentence. The reason why? Jake Browning has shown the capacity to make big-time throws. He will push the ball down the field. As you saw against Jacksonville, he's not afraid to make a mistake. He will make mistakes. He will throw picks, but he will give T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Chase Brown. He will give the playmakers in Cincinnati an opportunity to make plays. Cincinnati, because of the AFC, I think 8-9 probably gets you a wild card spot. So let's say Browning plays 500 ball, and that's a big if considering the schedule Cincinnati will have to endure, but let's just assume for now that he's able to do it. Joe Burrow comes back mid-December or so. You still have a few games left on the schedule. Can you push him? Can you expect him to be the Joe Burrow we all know and love? Or is he going to be hampered by that turf toe? Because what happens with the turf toe, it disallows you to move around the pocket. It disallows you to push off. Everything athletically you want to do, you no longer can do. That's why it's such a painful injury. That's why, considering it's a grade 3, it's such a big concern. And that's why ultimately he does have to have surgery. I don't think Burrow gets enough credit either for the type of mover he is. He's really able to manipulate the pocket. He moves to throw, unlike some other quarterbacks who move to just run. But that's one of his big strengths. So all of those are big question marks. But there is still a window for Cincinnati at 8-9, 9-8 to make a wild card push. Taking a futuristic view, the bottom line, Joe Burrow at this point in his career, with all the injuries he's accrued, needs to be protected at all costs. And that should be the Bengals' number one priority moving forward from an offensive line standpoint. I saw a crazy stat that compared Joe Burrow to Andrew Luck. Through their first 70 games, Luck was sacked 156 times, Burrow 196 times, 40 more. And we talked a lot about Andrew Luck throughout his career, about how the Colts failed him, they never protected him, and how it was so sad to see the way he was brutalized in the pocket. I think I speak for all NFL fans when I say we do not want to see the great Joe Burrow suffer the same fate. And now for the team that the Bengals are playing this week, the Vikings, who are without quarterback J.J. McCarthy and Pro Bowl running back Aaron Jones. I rate this at a level 2.5. in terms of concern. You don't have McCarthy, but you do have Carson Wentz, who at this point in his career is a journeyman, but we know he can win you a game or two. And I think as a result, you will see Minnesota's offense look relatively similar. Not having Aaron Jones is a problem, but we have seen Jordan Mason look terrific through Minnesota's first 2 games. And if we're being honest, Cincinnati's defense has not shown us enough yet to expect them to shut down Minnesota. So I go a level 2.5 with the Vikings. So this week, it's Browning versus Wentz. Who would have forecasted that? Certainly not me, but this is a big game, especially with the state that these two teams are in. I like Cincinnati on the road. We talked earlier about Jake Browning and some of the throws he can make, his ability to push the ball down the field. Minnesota's defense has looked good, has looked stout. You always expect that from Brian Flores, but I like the Bengals, and I like them going 3-0. Ironically, again, despite the injuries, despite all the concern, the Bengals will be 3-0 and atop the AFC North after Week 3. In addition to all the injuries that are plaguing the NFL, several teams are already 0-2, and for some of those teams, that could mean 0 and tombstone if they don't figure it out quickly. So let's start off with the Giants. Big Blue, the G-Men. 4. That's my level of concern with New York right now. I know I got on Russell Wilson last week. He was much better against Dallas, so big ups to him. He actually deserved to win that game. The Giants probably deserved to win that game. The defense did not do them any favors. So my level of concern with New York is a 4. But if they don't get Jackson Dart, the rookie out of Ole Miss, in sooner than later, that 4 becomes a 5. Because Russell Wilson's not going to throw for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns every week. The Giants aren't going to play a Micah Parsons-less Dallas Cowboys defense every week. You got to go to the rookie. This is his time, and you don't want to wait till it's too late and the season is gone. And now we go to South Beach, the Miami Dolphins. I won't stop talking about it. This is an absolute dumpster fire. My concern level is 5 + 5 = 10. That's my basic arithmetic here on the Schultz Report. I can't watch them anymore. You got Tyreek, who's fed up with Tua. Tua's fed up with Mike McDaniel. McDaniel looks utterly confused wearing his double sweatshirt, hoodie in the 97-degree heat. Get the guy a water. Get the man some Gatorade. He needs to hydrate because he's not coaching the way he needs to coach. There's no accountability. The roster is a mess thanks to the GM, Chris Greer. And at some point, the roof is going to blow off. I don't know when it is. They play Buffalo Thursday night on the road. They're a massive 12-point dog. You have to assume they're 0-3, but South Beach, the Miami Dolphins, the Fish, not going anywhere anytime soon. And now let's talk about the Bears, who are 0-2 after getting absolutely destroyed by the Lions and Ben Johnson's return to Detroit. I reported yesterday, most likely losing all-pro cornerback Jalen Johnson for the season. Caleb looks like a young quarterback that's still trying to figure it out. And I would go a step further and say, to me, he looks like he doesn't know where he wants to go with the football. The whole point of bringing in Ben Johnson, this offensive guru, this wonderkind, was to ignite Caleb Williams and get this offense to where it needed to be. And we're not seeing that. We're just not seeing the creativity that we saw with Detroit. We're not seeing a confident quarterback. And my concern is also defensively. Last year, obviously, Matt Eberflus was captaining this defense. He was fired. He's now the Cowboys DC. But this Bears defense has looked really bad as well. And against Detroit, they didn't tackle, they didn't cover, they just got completely annihilated. My level of concern with Chicago is a bona fide 4.5. And if we don't see anything soon, this season's going to get away. That division, the NFC North, is really tough, and Chicago's going to have to figure it out soon. As a matter of fact, I actually caught up with a seasoned NFL scout over the weekend, and he basically said that as talented as Caleb is, it felt to him like he's regressed. Now, it's a small sample size, to be fair, only 2 weeks, but it's not what you want to see from your franchise quarterback, your number 1 overall pick, through this early season return with Ben Johnson. And lastly, your big surprise, the Chiefs are 0-2, maybe an alarm to some, but to me, a non-issue, a non-starter. My level of concern is not a 1, it's a 0. As Draymond Green said on our show, you got to knock off the champs. You can never underestimate the champ. And the Chiefs have been dominant in the AFC the past 3 years. I realize they are off to a slow start. They're going to get right Sunday night against the Giants. It's only a matter of time. Only 4 more weeks now until Rashee Rice comes back. That'll make a big impact. And as long as you have the trio of Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, and Patty Mahomes, the Chiefs remain the team to beat in the AFC. But listen, it's not doom and gloom for everyone. For some clubs, there's a lot to be optimistic about. The Colts. This is optimism at a level 5. Indiana Jones is balling like we knew he could. Got to pat myself on the back for that one. The Colts are the first team to score on their first 10 possessions of the season. Absolutely insane stat. They set the record for the most consecutive touchdowns, and they are the first team in the Super Bowl era to not punt, not one punt, in their first 2 games. Jones is also the first Colts quarterback since Peyton Manning in 2010 to start with 5 touchdowns and no giveaways, and with his 588 yards to start, he is behind Peyton and Johnny Unitas. That's it. These are some ridiculous stats. And remember, we spoke exclusively with Daniel Jones during the preseason in Indianapolis. That interview is up on the channel, and he called all of this.
What are we going to say about Daniel Jones a year from now? Let's fast forward. We can't do it. But hypothetically, what do you think we'll be saying?
I mean, I think he led the Colts team to a very strong season and scored a lot of points, made a lot of plays, and you know, I'm excited. I'm excited about this team. I think we got a lot of good players kind of across the board. But yeah, I mean, I think looking back, I think you say, hey, this was a Colts team that not a ton of people were talking about, maybe, but you know, proved they had a lot and you know, won a ton of games and made a lot of plays, scored a lot of points.
Meanwhile, the Eagles are handling business. The reigning champs are 2-0. They took down the Chiefs in Arrowhead, who were underdogs at home. And my optimism for Philly, 5. I don't care that Jalen Hurts hasn't produced great stats yet. I love that Jalen Hurts doesn't care about the stats. It's only a matter of time for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown to heat up. I care about the wins, though. And Philly has already started with a statement win, really 2 statement wins, considering they didn't have Jalen Carter. They beat Dallas, and obviously, again, on the road at KC. So give me a level 5 for the reigning champs. And lastly, the Buccaneers are 2-0 with their dramatic comeback win against C.J. Stroud and the Texans on Monday Night Football. To me, the optimism around Tampa Bay, let's go 3.5. I like this team. Really like Bucky Irving. Been super impressed with Baker Mayfield, but I'm still not quite there. I got to see a couple more wins, a couple more big-time performances from Baker, but like where Tampa's going. Big ups to Todd Bowles, done a hell of a job. And big ups to Josh Grizzard. I tweeted about this Monday night. You might not be familiar with that name, but you should be. He is the first-year offensive coordinator for the Bucs, taking over for Liam Cohen, has done a terrific job as well. Really game planning for Emeka Egbuka, for Mike Evans and Irving, making sure they get their touches. And with the Bucs facing the Jets in their next game, they can quickly be 3-0 atop of the NFC South. And before we bring in Keyshawn, I'm going to keep saying it until they stop me. If you're an Isaac Tesla, Emeka Egbuka, or a Drake Maye fan, you have a lot to be optimistic about. Let's start with Tesla. Every week, it seems like he makes an incredible, acrobatic, Herculean catch. He did it again. I am so impressed with him, the body control, the balance. One of the things that I loved about him coming out of the draft was he was an elite athlete, but talk to anybody around the NFL evaluating him, and they felt like his upside was extraordinarily high. That's why Detroit traded up for him, gave up so much to get him. And I actually think he'll get more and more involved in the game plan as the season progresses. As far as Emeka Egbuka, we talked about him a lot in the preseason as not only a potential Rookie of the Year candidate, but potentially becoming one of the premier young wide receivers, kind of like how Brian Thomas Jr. did last season. Egbuka is as good as they come in terms of route running, toughness. If you recall, I talked to Brian Hartline, who obviously recruited him, signed him, coached him at Ohio State. He's the Buckeyes wide receiver coach. He said that point blank, Emeka Egbuka might have been the smartest player he's ever coached. You combine all of those attributes plus the fact that he's already established this incredible connection with Baker Mayfield, clearly going to be a star in this league. And finally, Drake Maye. You know, he did not play well week 1 against the Raiders. I thought he looked pretty average at best. But then week 2 on the road against Miami showed you why he is a franchise cornerstone and why there's so much optimism about him in New England. One of the things I loved about Drake Maye in that game too was his patience. And you can have patience in different ways. And I'm not a quarterback guru by any stretch, but in talking to some NFL evaluators, coaches, they've always said to me that when you talk about a young quarterback, patience with your eyes, what does that mean? He showed it against Miami. It's having the ability to wait for that first, second, third read, but hold off on that third read knowing it's going to be there and knowing that you have to hold a safety or a corner or a linebacker. That's what Drake Maye did against Miami. He also used his legs really well. I think his athleticism gets undervalued because he has such a accurate, strong arm, but just so impressed with Drake Maye and absolutely ecstatic about his future with the Patriots. All right, that's enough for me. Let's bring in Keyshawn Johnson to get his thoughts on a very hectic week 2. Key, I'm going to jump right into the Bengals. They obviously lose Joe Burrow for potentially 3 months. My question for you is quite simply, if you're Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, how do you adjust knowing that Jake Browning throws a much different ball and is a different quarterback?
You know what, Jordan? I think when you look at the situation, you practice with these guys all the time. You're around them. You're in meetings with them. So you understand the body language. They understand you. You get the reps necessary before practice, after practice, during practice. And you've played with them before, whether it was in preseason, whether it was a short stint because your quarterback was down for a little bit of period of time and they were Band-Aids. So you have some familiarity with them, right? I went through this situation back in 1998 when Vinny, or better yet, 99, when Vinny Testaverde went down the first game of the year with a torn Achilles. And I had to go through several different quarterbacks throughout the course of the season. It worked out in the end, but we didn't do great as a team.
So how does that impact the way you run your routes, if anything? And as a receiver, does that change your mindset?
It does. You know, for instance, Vinny Testaverde had an arm like
cannon.
I mean, like just ridiculous, right? And then I had to make an adjustment to Rick Meyer. Making an adjustment to Rick Meyer was like, when is this ball coming? You know, it took a while to get there. He had to throw with a lot of anticipation. So it was a little bit different. Then I went back to Ray Lucas, and Ray Lucas had a similar arm to Vinny Testaverde. He didn't know how to manipulate the football. Everything was Verlander, right? Everything was the big unit coming downhill full speed, you know, and so you have to make those adjustments.
Well, you know, Rick Meyer, Notre Dame, you know, we don't really trust those Notre Dame guys.
But that ball was it
never came.
Oh my God, it was just one of those deals. And there's nothing against him. It's just he didn't have a strong arm.
Keyshawn, looking around the league right now, what are you most concerned about? For me, I'll just be honest, it's Miami.
Well, why would it be a concern for you in Miami? What is there a concern about? Going into the season, and I'll just answer the question for you about the Miami Dolphins. Going into the season, you couldn't have possibly thought that the Miami Dolphins were going to do anything. I mean, if you had them penciled in as something special in the AFC, then you're going to lose your money. For me, though, Jordan, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs is a little bit of a head scratcher right now. And I picked them, if you remember when we were together, I said that the Kansas City Chiefs could potentially wind up missing the playoffs. And everybody looked at me like I was a damn fool, like I had frogs on my face or something. And I'm like, no. The reality of it is you can go and be great for a long period of time. And then there's a reset button that you may stall for a couple of years and have to hit that reset button. Think about the great Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. They had a nice run. Then all of a sudden they were just a team with a jersey, a couple guys running around with jerseys, and they hit again. And I think this is what we're seeing with the Kansas City Chiefs, where, you know, you play the Super Bowl champions and the Philadelphia Eagles. They come into your place. Okay, they take care of business. They win that game. But prior to that, you go down to Brazil and you lose to, I guess you could call them a rival within your division in the San Diego Chargers, Los Angeles Chargers. But the Chargers are coming. I mean, they just are. And so my concern would be more so about the Kansas City Chiefs possibly missing the playoffs.
If Rashee Rice comes back week 6 or week 7, how much of an impact does that make for Mahomes and for the offense?
I think it helps. I think it helps, but by then it might be too late. That's the worry, right? The worry is it going to be too late? Because the Chargers are out in front. They got one up on you already.
Yeah.
They beat you. They just took care of the Raiders. We see what the Denver Broncos could potentially be, right? We see that they're kind of a good football team if they can reel in their young quarterback and that defense can continue to just try to play within themselves. So now you're behind the ball on them. Nobody's afraid of the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes anymore. They're just not. They're not the big bullies on the block.
What about the team you're most excited about? Who has impressed you the most?
I'm really, really impressed with the Green Bay Packers. I mean, I kind of like the Packers a lot. I just do. I think that they got something. I mean, obviously Michael Parsons is right there in the mix, gives them a little get up and go. And then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers showed me something, last night or yesterday, better yet, against the Houston Texans. They fought, they stayed the course, and then they eventually pulled away. Now, Houston Texans and some of the coaching, as far as I was concerned, you take that 3 points. What are you doing? You take that 3. With about 6 minutes to go in the game, you take the 3, and you wouldn't even be in the situation of losing the game. But those are the two, mainly, I would say, the Green Bay Packers.
We talked briefly about the Dolphins. I'm just curious your thoughts on Tyreek and Tua and Mike McDaniel. Like, it seems to me as if they're getting it. It gets worse every week, every quarter. They get more and more angry at each other.
Don't use the word angry, please, because then that turns into something way more than that. But I think, Jordan, when you look at the situation in the offseason or better yet, at the end of last season, when Tyreek was frustrated and Tyreek said, hey, you know what, I'm done with this. This is getting on my nerves, because he's coming from a winning culture from the Kansas City Chiefs. Then he has some success early in Miami. Then he backs his quarterback, and then all of a sudden the quarterback comes back and things aren't rosy. They lose, they get run out of the building. They start the season. Tyreek's going through a lot of off-the-field issues and things, and then Tua has to say something to combat what Tyreek said. And then once he did that, it basically put a rift in between those two. Now you have a head coach that's trying to mend the fences between the two. Now you got a quarterback that's like, I got the money now. As if you noticed, if you go back to Tua's first couple of years in the National Football League, he was quiet as a church mouse. As soon as he signed his big deal, his hairstyle changed. He got a little more pizzazz to him. He started to talk a little bit more, become a little more, I don't want to say a leader, but voice his opinions a little bit more. Because he was a soft, quiet guy at Alabama. Soft, quiet guy when he first entered the league in Miami. But once he got that big deal, he became a voice. And I think Tyreek realized that too at the same time. Now look, I've been in situations with teammates and players and coaches and everything in my career. Hell, I even work with you. You can get through it. You can get through it. No question about it. You can get through it and you can win. Once you cross those white lines, we're all one big team and one big family. When I get in my car and go home, and the player gets in his car and go home, it's over. Don't need to discuss anything.
Officiating, Key, I got to ask you. As a fan, I'm dying watching some of these calls. The late hits that really aren't late, the unnecessary roughness, the taunting. Officiating has changed so much from when you played to now. How do you break that down when you think about it as a fan first and as a player as well?
Well, number one, it's an emphasis that's put out by the league in terms of the taunting, right? They want to slow it down. They don't want it. I'm sure there's some corporate monster sitting there with his suit on and his, I don't like the way that looks. And then they got to answer to that. So they kind of are playing to that audience to a degree. In terms of the late hitting, I don't like it. In terms of quarterback play, when I watched Geno Smith get hit in the face last night, right in front of the referee, and they just looked at Geno Smith and moved the chains, opposed to throwing the flag. If there was another more established quarterback, then they give them the benefit of the doubt, they throw the flag. With Geno Smith last night, they didn't do it. I saw it with Stroud. I saw it throughout the weekend, things of that nature, late hits. And I think they're trying to, feels like, keep the game moving and not have so much clock stoppage and slowing things down. But ultimately, in the end, it could cost the team. A pass interference call, last night against the Raiders wasn't called, where the guy literally was pushing him out of bounds, and the damn ball bounced off the Chargers defender's helmet, and he never turned to look to see where the pass was going. He just was running straight ahead, and boom, but the referee never called it. So, and you can see Pete Carroll having a hissy fit about it.
Yeah, but it's even, I'll leave you with this. Even the Denver game with Indy and the leverage play, my issue with that isn't even the call itself, although I don't like it. It's the fact that the tush push is essentially the same type of deal, and that's a totally legal play. But then the dude jumps over the center, and
You
they
can't
call.
do that.
I know, but like, what?
Can't do it.
It's so inconsistent though, because the tush push is the same type of play.
Can't jump over the center. You know, I take you back to my playing days when I was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are playing the Indianapolis Colts, and I believe Simeon Rice jumped over the center and blocked a field goal, and they gave him another shot,
You lost.
and we wound up losing.
Better player, Simeon Rice or Javon Curse?
Simeon Rice or Javon Curse?
The freak.
No. I'm trying to think. Simeon was a teammate, so obviously he gets the nod. And he came out of my draft class. He helped me win a Super Bowl. He gets that nod. But the freak, when he was, the freak was ridiculous. He was tall, lean, long arms. You know, could run like the wind. They pretty much they're about the same. I think the freak might have played the run a little more aggressive than Simeon. Simeon would pin his ears back to go get the quarterback a little bit more, but I would take them both. Trust me.
And then you put Derek Brooks ahead of them both.
Yeah. Derek Brooks is the best teammate I've ever played with. You know, Derek Brooks, Curtis Martin. You know, those guys were real dudes. You know, but Jordan Schultz. Never mind. I was gonna say you can't say I'm a good teammate now after already saying you got through working with me. Jordan Schultz or Ian Rappaport, but I left it alone.
There it is. Keyshawn Johnson. Key, I will see you next week. Always a pleasure. It's that time again, everyone. The NFL officials are already making their mark on the season with game-changing calls, most of them bad. Let's start off with the play everyone is talking about. Colts, Broncos, Indy moves to 2-0, Denver moves to 1-1. Of course, if you're watching it, you thought it was the other way around. However, after the missed field goal by Indianapolis, the referees threw their little flags and they called Denver on a leverage play. Now, as we talked about with Keyshawn, you cannot jump over the center. And it's actually, the issue I have isn't even really with the call itself. It's the lack of consistency. Because the tush-push play that Philadelphia has so clearly perfected, props to them, nobody else can seem to do it, that play to me is even more dangerous, certainly equally as dangerous, and is very similar in terms of the risk that the leverage play consists of. So strictly speaking, as an NFL fan, I hate the call because it lacks the consistency, and most importantly for me, it directly impacts the game itself. And as a result, Indy's 2-0. They deserve to win. They played great. Another terrible call, pass interference against Travis Hunter and the Jags. This was at the very end of the game, and I actually didn't see this live. I saw it a few minutes after. I thought he played that as well as you can. As a result of that, Cincinnati ends up getting the first down. They end up winning 31-27. And listen, that's my biggest problem. It's not even the call itself. It's the lack of consistency. And if you talk to any player, they will tell you the one thing they really want from a referee is to be consistent. If you're an official and you're consistent, now I at least know what to expect. But when you don't know what to expect and the game is that fast anyway, it becomes really, really frustrating, not only as a player, but of course as a fan as well. Now let's bring in national champion, the early leader in TUDS through 2 games, an electric young wide receiver who we told you to draft in every single fantasy league, and the pride of the Pacific Northwest from the 253, Emeka Egbuka. Emeka, an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So final drive of the game, Monday Night Football. You need a touchdown. The game's on the line. What's Baker like? What's the huddle like? Is it actually tense?
You know, this is back-to-back weeks now, having game-winning drives, which is really exciting. But, you know, in the NFL, that's what it comes down to. It's a lot of one-score games, and you just need leaders and people who are able to make plays in that moment. And Baker's exactly the type of guy you want at the helm of your offense when that's happening. So, you know, we know what we got to do. Defense is playing their tail off, and, you know, we haven't been holding up our end of the deal all Monday night. So we knew we needed to come in clutch in the 2-minute, and, you know, we were just able to get it done.
How would you evaluate your first 2 weeks? I know you're a tough critic on yourself. What do you feel like you need to improve on?
You know, it's hard to just point at one thing. You know, you watch film and like you said, I'm a very tough critic of myself, and you want to be perfect any given Sunday. So, that's the reason we watch film, and that's the reason we practice, because we want to be perfect on Sundays. And obviously, perfection is never going to show up on the field, but you want to get as close to it as possible. So there's a lot of things in the areas I want to grow in, but I'm just really grateful to my coaches and my teammates for trusting me in the role that I'm in currently, and just trying my best to be able to produce.
Your college wide receivers coach, Brian Hartline, one of the things he told me before the draft, Emeka, was he thought you were probably the smartest and toughest player he'd ever coached. Where did that come from for you?
I've been given a God-given passion for this game. I love it down to my core. I eat, sleep, and breathe football most of the time. So, it just comes down to the love of the game for me. And, the football IQ and all that just comes from, studying it and watching route running, and, not because I have to, but because, I'm obsessed with the game of football ever since a young age. So I've always been studying routes and defenses, and literally, like, my favorite part of the day is the film room. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of the day. Yeah. So I've considered, going into coaching and stuff afterwards. I don't know what that door looks like, that path looks like for me, after my career is done. But, I'm very passionate about this game.
You would actually want to be a coach. That's pretty cool.
I've thought about it for sure.
How much of that is love of the game, and how much of it is you love as a teammate, you love working with other people?
Yeah, I think that, I've had so many influential coaches over the course of my life, and I just know the impact they've made on me when I was young and impressionable. Being able to talk to, young athletes who want to go on the path that I've been on myself and give them advice and tips and pointers. I think, making an impact in that way is instrumental in, the success of others, because I credit a lot to who I am now, to the people who have helped bring me up.
Is it safe to say Ohio State's the real WRU?
You can make an argument. I think, I can't discredit anything that anybody else has done, but
yeah.
We have a lot of players who are doing it at a very high level, obviously. But I think it's pretty clear cut between us and LSU.
Yeah.
It's an argument that could go both ways. I think LSU is doing a phenomenal job in the league as of right now. They got Malik Neighbors, they got Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase,
Brian Thomas.
Brian Thomas, exactly. So they got a ton of dudes who have had big years over the last couple of years. So, and then Ohio State, obviously, we keep pumping them out, first-round receivers year after year. So I know just the competitive nature of me and all the other teammates that I've had at Ohio State, we want to make it as clear-cut as possible. So we're going to push for that.
How about Emeka Egbuka's top 5 all-time Buckeye receivers?
Top 5 Buckeye receivers. All right. So you're going to have to go Chris Carter. I'll put Marvin there.
Yeah.
Because, he's top 4 Heisman candidate, and I played with him. So maybe a little bias there. You got Ted Ginn.
Love Ted
Speedster.
Ginn.
Take the top off. So he was really fun to watch. There's another spot up there between David Boston and Michael Jenkins. So those two,
yeah,
I'm not going to give them both the spot, but one of those two. And then the third one I would give to Chris Olave, leader in receiving touchdowns.
Not Emeka Egbuka.
Nah, I mean, I try to, leader in receptions, all that. But, I played with some super talented guys. And, if they have their own list and they want to put me in there, that's cool. But I'd like to have them in mind.
Where do you think, when it's all said and done, Jeremiah Smith will end up in terms of the Buckeye greats?
Yeah, I think he has a real shot at being number one. There was an interview a little while ago with Chris and Garrett, and they were talking about Jackson and how special he was going to be at Ohio State. And it's just something about, passing the torch down to the next guy, and they're the real deal. It just gets you excited, and that's kind of what Chris and Garrett were feeling about Jackson. And then he ended up having 1,600 yards. Had 347 yards in the Rose Bowl, like backed up everything that the older dudes were saying. So what I'm saying about Jeremiah, I think is going to hold true. He's a, one of a kind specimen. Haven't, ran into too many like him. I've never really seen Julio Jones or Calvin Johnson play in person, but I can only imagine it was very similar to this. Super gifted kid, talented. And, what ties it all together is his work ethic. He's all in bottom with football. There's nothing else on his mind at any given time. He's
Wow.
laser focused, and he has a bright future.
I think what shocked me is how big he was. I didn't realize you mentioned the Julio comp. That was my comp.
Yeah.
You mentioned he's all in with football. It's one thing to be super talented, but to have that kind of drive is pretty special. It's probably, I imagine, what's created a lot of success for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would transition to say, when did you realize that you were in love with football? Like, when for you, was there a moment that you said, this is what I want to do with my life?
It was really my first touchdown ever, second grade. I was like, dang, this is pretty amazing. Like my first time, in the end zone and everything like that. Obviously, I felt that way with, every sport I was playing. I loved basketball. I loved baseball. I wanted to do all three professionally if I could. But, football, I started getting a lot of, national recognition by the time I was, in eighth grade. And I was doing national tournaments and stuff like that. And I was performing at a really high level on the biggest stages. And that's when I kind of knew that this was something I could seriously pursue. So, coming from Steilacoom, Pacific Northwest, small town, not too much competition, you don't really have a good grasp of how good you actually are. So for me, it was kind of getting on that national stage and, still, not missing a beat when it came to my performance and all that type of stuff. And I was like, okay, I think I could do this.
Winning a Natty or winning a Super Bowl?
I guess we'll have to see. Check back in a couple of years.
Exactly.
Back in a couple of years, and I'll be able to give you an answer on that.
Where do you keep the ring? Is there a special place for it?
I don't have a special place yet. I'm going to make a whole little, display and everything like that. Just haven't had the time to be able to install that and everything, but I do plan on having, a nice little display. I got my jersey, I got my helmet, got the 205th reception ball, all that. So,
yes.
Yeah.
What about for you? Is there a player that you would love to swap jerseys with? Who do you want after a game? Is there someone you look at and you say, I got to get that one?
I actually just did my first jersey swap on Monday with CJ. So that was the first one for me. That was really cool. But I think when it comes to the ones I'm excited for, it's really all my OSU teammates. So, we got Garrett next week, playing Garrett. We got Marv down the road. I get to see Chris 2 times a year. I'm seeing Jackson in Seattle. So I get to kind of play all my brothers who I played with, while I was at Ohio State, which is really cool for me. And that's really what I look forward to the most.
I love that you get to go back to Seattle your rookie year. That's insane. That game's going to be so fire.
Oh yeah, my mom already bought, a whole section out. She's selling it to all my friends and family and stuff. So I have probably more than 100 people there if I had to guess.
I was watching an interview with you and you said that before you had really established yourself at Ohio State that you were confused with CJ Stroud.
It was CJ Jackson, like all the
hybrid.
The three of us we kind of look similar. So, I remember there was this one time we were going to the Rose Bowl. This is my freshman year, right before Jackson had that big game. And we went to Disneyland as a team. And apparently people at Disneyland got wind that Ohio State was there. And I was walking around and I was getting called CJ and Jackson, like left and right. Like just, we had similar hair, similar everything. So, that happened quite a bit my early years on at Ohio State.
Do you go with it or do you correct them?
I don't sign for CJ. I don't sign for Jackson. I say, hey, listen, that's not me. I wish it was. I wish I could make your dreams come true, but I'll try to. If I find them, I'll point them in your direction.
Studying the art of football, Emeka, being around Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Hall of Fame, all-pro caliber players, what have you been able to take from that?
Honestly, just the high-level conversation that they have, like just not even in the film room, in the locker room. Like we're constantly talking ball. And, I gain a lot just from listening to Chris and Mike talk and Sterling Shepard, like all these guys who have, tons of years in the league. I think, Chris is going on, I want to say year 9 or something like that. Mike 12, Shep 12. So just listening to them talk about the game and route running and, defenders leverages and stuff like that. I don't really say too much a lot of the time. I'm just listening to hear them talk, and I can always ask them questions of how they would run a certain route or what they would do versus this look. So there's just a wealth of knowledge I have access to, which is really cool for me being, a football nerd and stuff like that, just constantly learning and growing.
And now a lot of people are they asking Emeka for his autograph?
Yeah, I'm getting that more and more, especially, Ohio's a hot spot for me in the Columbus area. There's a lot of people who recognize me there, and then Tampa's starting to get to that point as well.
We talked about Jeremiah Smith. On the other side of the ball is Caleb Downs. From everybody I've talked to, I've heard he's maybe the best safety prospect to come out since like an Earl Thomas, Eric Berry. They're talking about him in that category. What is it about Caleb Downs that you love so much?
Yeah, I mean, he's as advertised. Reminds me a lot of myself, honestly, just with his approach to the game, the cerebral approach to the game, the seriousness in his play style, and just how much he loves it and how much he takes pride in his work, much like I do. So kind of right when he came in, you have big expectations. You're getting Caleb Downs as a transfer. You had a All-American freshman year. You want to see what this guy's about. And, he exceeded all expectations. And, it made me better going against him in practice, being able to block him and stuff. But he's one of those special guys who kind of has a switch that he flips on game day. You try your best throughout the week as a defender not to kill your teammates and keep them up and make sure all the injuries are fine. But on Saturday in the shoe, I mean, he just turns into an absolute heat-seeking missile, like just sprinting straight downhill once he sees something. Super instinctive, amazing ball skills, leader. Normally, like in college football, they just made a change where you're allowed to have the comms in the player's headset. Exactly. So normally on offense, it's the quarterback. On defense, it's the Mike linebacker. Well, on our defense, it's actually Caleb. He's kind of running the show. He's doing everything, sending everybody up. So, he's kind of the heartbeat of our defense.
That's pretty rare for a safety.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about Ryan Day? Is there a comedic, funny side to him, or a side that maybe the average fan hasn't seen?
Yeah, a little bit. I would say most of the time it's mostly serious. He definitely has his moments, and the team meetings are kind of where those show up. But those are more for the players only. The media's not really going to see that side of him. But I love Coach Day. He's taken some heat over the years. Just as I've been at Ohio State, our program and him specifically have taken a lot of heat, including his family and just everything he's done for us as players. He's such a player's coach, super genuine. Like, you can go up to him and talk about anything, and he's a huge advocate for the players' health, physically, mentally, spiritually, everything. He want to make sure we're good in every aspect of life. So, just knowing how much the players mean to him is really why the program is so backed behind him.
So we asked Daniel Jones, what's harder, baseball or football? And to my surprise, he actually said baseball. So I'd pose the same question to you, Emeka. As a standout center fielder, which sport is harder?
I would say offensively, baseball is more difficult.
Hitting.
Baseball, it's probably the hardest sport I've ever played, especially mentally. It gets your mind stronger, especially if you're going 0 for 3 on a day. It can really tear down your confidence, but that's what I like about it. It keeps you headstrong, and I'm able to track the ball way better in football because of my center field skills, and I'm able to, keep my head level when someone's talking trash on the football field. So
center field is not all that hard. I'll be honest. If you got the God-given ability like I have to be able to run and track baseballs in the outfield, and when I was playing, I had a good arm. I haven't thrown a baseball in a while, so I don't know how far I can get it.
What's your arm like?
I don't know. When I pitched, I threw,
85?
mid-80s and stuff like that. So it wasn't crazy. But, you give me a crow hop and I can throw some guy out from center field. But, defensively, I would say baseball is not as hard as football. But it is really hard to hit a fastball. I remember in high school we were playing against Fife. And,
Fife, yep.
Yeah, we were playing against Fife. And they had this pitcher committed to UW. And man, he was throwing gas. His breaking balls were, breaking all the way across the plate. And I think I want to say like 1 for 3 on the day or something like that. And my hit was like, I was late on it. I just pushed it down the right field line and it just ran, and I got like a triple, I think. But it was not a great hit. I just luckily just blasted it down the line. But, when you're not used to seeing that type of speed and you face it for the first time, it feels like nothing's more impossible.
What will we be saying as fans at the end of the year about Emeka Egbuka?
I mean, I don't know. There's so much season left. every day I just wake up and, try to get 1% better, try to do my job, whatever's asked of me, and hopefully, just do my best to glorify God on the field. So I hope at the end of the season, no matter what the outcome is, that people can say that, I played for the glory of God. I glorified him on the field, and, hopefully I did my job while I was at it. But I'm not a person who carries too many expectations with me week in and week out. I think if you do the work and you do the process and you're serious about your business, all the other stuff follows.
You're so even keeled. It's like I pick up on that after 15 minutes. You've always been like that, even as a kid.
I have. My friends and family tell me that a lot of the time. I'm not too much on a roller coaster. There's not really too much that can get me off balance. And I credit all of that to just my faith in the Lord and him being my rock through everything. So there's not really too much that can shake me.
Emeka, I know you've given so much of your life to football, but I'm curious, what do you feel the game of football has given you back in return?
I mean, it's a really good question. I think that, the unfortunate thing about sports is that they don't always love you back.
True.
I have tons of friends who show so much promise. One of my best friends of all time, his name's Cameron Babb, played wide receiver at Ohio State, has torn his ACL 5 times. And, he's way more athletic than I have ever been in my life. Like, this dude is a freak athlete, like would have been an amazing receiver in the NFL. And, football just never loved him back. So, it's tough that you can have that, end of the spectrum on football. And you can also have, the I wouldn't say the luck, but, a lot of the fortune go your way. So, but I think one thing that I have learned from it is just, perseverance and work ethic. And, there's going to be days where, you don't want to be there. You don't want to put in the work. And I think there's pushing through that develops your character to a level that, most people don't get to see or most people don't have a chance of doing because there's a different toll that football takes on your body.
How do you feel physically through 2 weeks?
Football soreness. I feel, healthy for the most part, but I got smacked a couple of times last night.
Yeah, I saw.
The Texans defense, they play really hard. They hit, and but you got to be ready to take that. I mean, this is football at the end of the day. So, brush it off, move on to the next play, get your body back for the next week.
I asked this question to A.J. Brown last week. I'll tell you what he said after you answer. I said, 200. Would you rather have 200 yards or 3 tuds?
I'm going with the 3 touchdowns.
That's what he said too.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, I love the yards, but the touchdowns, you can't replace those. They really add up.
Yeah, I'm going with the touchdowns. That's the name of the game. I want to win. I could have – at the end of the day, I'm trying to win the game. Honestly, my stats don't matter, but if I have 3 touchdowns, I know there's points on the board. I could have 200 yards and, we have 0 points at the end of the day. So I'm going for the victory.
Emeka, awesome interview, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. Absolute pleasure. Would love to stay connected and do this again. And more than anything, rooting for you and in your corner all the way.
Yeah, man, no doubt. I really appreciate you having me. This is really fun.
And now for my favorite part of the show. My team gives me several bets that, full disclosure, I have not seen yet, and now I have to make a pick. These are presented by Fanatics Sportsbook. Let's go. Bengals money line plus 130 over Minnesota, or Cowboys money line over the Bears. Give me the Bengals plus 130. Jake Browning showing up, showing out. Lions plus 5.5 over Baltimore, or the Packers over the Browns 8.5. Give me the Packers, not only because I love Green Bay right now, but traditionally over his career, Jared Goff has really struggled against Baltimore. So double whammy there. Give me the Packers in a, let's say, 12 to 14-point win over the dog pound. That's a big spread on the road. That's a lot. Okay, Colts 3.5 over the Titans, or Buffalo 12.5 over Miami. So Draymond and me talked a lot about this, both these games, but the Buffalo game is so many points. Tennessee 3.5 over division rival. Wow. I'm going Indianapolis. Indiana Jones keeps it rolling, minus 3.5. Although I don't hate Buffalo with that number either. All right, that's it for episode 3. Thank you to Keyshawn Johnson for always checking in with us. Big thank you to Emeka Egbuka for the time with us today. And as always, thank you for hanging out with us right here on the Schultz Report. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and most importantly, good luck this week.